My name is Reagan Miller. I'm 32 years old. And this is the story of the Christmas that taught me the hardest truth I've ever had to face, that love without limits isn't kindness. It's surrender. If you enjoy true to life stories like mine, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you won't miss what happens next. The snow started falling somewhere outside Montpelier. Fat cottony flakes that turned the world to slow motion. I'd left Boston just after dawn, my SUV packed with groceries, winter boots, and the kind of peace I'd been chasing for months. Every mile north loosened something tight inside my chest. The constant ping of Slack messages and client deadlines had been replaced by the hum of tires on ice. I hadn't realized how loud my life had become until silence started to feel like a luxury. The dashboard clock blinked 2:17 p.m. I was making good time, better than expected given the storm. 10 more miles until the turnoff for Hollow Pines Road, then another 15 minutes of winding mountain drive before I'd reach the cabin. My cabin. I still smiled whenever I said those words. My cabin. Most people my age spent their bonuses on city apartments or quick getaways. I'd spent mine on Solitude, a 2-bedroom wooden cabin tucked between evergreens, overlooking a half-frozen lake in Vermont. It had taken 3 years of late nights and saving every spare dollar to afford it, but it was the first thing in my life that truly belonged to me. When I bought it, I'd promised myself it would be a refuge, somewhere I could breathe without being needed. This Christmas was supposed to be my first real test of that promise. For once, I wasn't hosting Tessa or planning elaborate dinners to keep her entertained. No gift wrapping marathons, no fake smiles while she complained about her life choices. This year, I'd told her I needed quiet. She'd pouted over the phone. But Christmas without family doesn't even count, she'd said, as if my existence were incomplete without her approval. I'd stayed firm, polite, but firm. She had Derek now, her husband of 2 years. They could make their own traditions. I was done being the built-in safety net. The highway narrowed into a rural road lined with tall, dark pines, bowed under the weight of snow. The radio played softly an old Norah Jones song, her voice like warm honey over the static. I turned it down, preferring the sound of the storm. When the cabin finally came into view through the trees, I exhaled in relief. The sight always hit me the same way, a quiet ache behind the ribs. It was a postcard scene, timber walls, wide porch, a chimney just starting to catch the snow. Except today, something was off. There were tire tracks in the drive. 2 sets. My foot eased off the gas. The circular driveway, normally pristine after a storm, was packed down with fresh prints. And parked near the porch was Tessa's cherry red Jeep Compass. Behind it, a mud-splattered pickup truck. I frowned. My pulse quickened. Maybe she'd had car trouble. Or maybe something had happened. An emergency. I pushed the thought of burglars away. No one broke into cabins in snowstorms. Still, unease crept through me like static. I parked behind her Jeep, engine idling, and stared at the soft glow leaking through the curtains. The cabin shouldn't have been lit. I'd turned everything off last time I left. I grabbed my phone, ready to call her, but hesitated. If it was an emergency, I'd know by now. Then the faint sound of music reached me through the storm, not the quiet jazz I'd left playing on my smart speaker, but Christmas pop, upbeat and relentless. Mariah Carey, of course. I shut the car off and stepped into the snow. Cold air bit at my cheeks. My boots crunched through the powder as I climbed the porch steps. The door was unlocked. Inside, I was met with a wave of warmth and chaos. A dozen people crowded my living room, red and gold lights flashing against the walls. A huge spruce tree, not my modest white light pine, but a garish monster dripping with tinsel, stood by the window. Laughter filled the space. Someone was dancing near the fire with a drink in hand, my drinkware. For a split second, I wondered if I'd stepped into the wrong house. Then I saw her, Tessa. She stood by the kitchen island, holding a wine glass like she was queen of the world. Her blonde hair was twisted into an elaborate bun, makeup flawless. She wore a red sweater, mine, actually, and the same self-satisfied smile I'd seen too many times before. When she spotted me, her eyes widened slightly, but not with surprise. Reagan, you're early. Every conversation in the room froze. Derek, her husband, turned mid-laugh and paled. The Christmas music suddenly felt obscene. I stared at her. Early for what? For the holiday, obviously. She laughed lightly, but her tone carried an edge. I figured you'd be somewhere fancier, Aspen or something. Not here. Funny, I said, stepping inside. I was under the impression I owned this cabin. The tension was immediate, thick enough to choke on. A middle-aged woman on my couch. Derek's mother, I realized, set her glass down carefully. Oh, we didn't realize Tessa said you'd given permission. Of course she did. My eyes swept the room. Suitcases by the stairs. Jackets hanging neatly on the hooks. The faint scent of cinnamon candles. I didn't buy. Every corner of the space screams someone's been living here. Tessa, I said slowly, why are there people in my house? Her smile faltered. It's just family, Reagan. Derek's parents, his brother, some friends from town. We thought we'd spend Christmas somewhere cozy. Cozy? My voice stayed calm, but I felt my pulse in my throat. You mean somewhere free? Derek looked at the floor, guilt written across his face. I told her we should call you first, he muttered. You should have done more than tell her, I said sharply. Tessa's jaw tightened. God, you make everything so dramatic. It's just a house, Reagan. No, I said, stepping closer. It's my house. The words came out low and even. The kind of calm that scares people more than yelling ever could. She stared at me for a beat, eyes flicking toward the guests as if searching for support. You know, you've always had this superiority thing, she said finally. You think because you make more money, you get to control everything. Control? I laughed softly. You moved into my property without asking. That's not control, Tessa, that's theft with Christmas lights. Her cheeks flushed crimson. Around us, guests exchanged awkward looks, murmuring excuses to leave. Within minutes, coats were being pulled from hooks, wine glasses abandoned half full. Derek's mother approached me timidly. I'm so sorry, dear. We truly thought you knew. I believe you, I said gently. But please gather your things. I want everyone gone within 24 hours. The air snapped like ice. Tessa gaped at me. You're serious? Completely. Derek's parents didn't argue. They began collecting bags, while Tessa stood frozen, glass trembling in her hand. You can't do this, she said finally. It's Christmas Eve tomorrow. You're kicking your own sister out? I'm asking you to respect a boundary. Her expression hardened. You always think you're better than me. No, I said. I've just stopped pretending we're the same. The silence that followed was long and sharp. Derek shifted uncomfortably, avoiding both our eyes, without another word. I turned, walked to the door, and stepped into the snow. Behind me, I heard her voice break, not crying, not yet just disbelief. But I didn't look back. The night was still, the only sound the soft hiss of snow against the trees. I walked to my car, brushed the frost from the windshield, and started the engine. As I pulled away, the cabin's windows glowed behind me, warm, golden, deceitful. I'd always thought leaving meant abandonment, but that night, for the first time, leaving meant survival. The road curved like ribbon through the snow, my headlights slicing through the thick white haze. Every few minutes, the tires slipped slightly on black ice, jerking me back into the present. My body was still humming with leftover adrenaline, that shaking calm that comes after you've done something irreversible. The radio stayed off. I didn't want to hear voices, not even my own reflection in the silence. The world outside was wrapped in snow, and for the first time, I matched its stillness. After half an hour of driving, the glow of a neon sign appeared in the distance. The Maple Diner. One of those roadside places that had been there since the 50s and smelled like burned coffee and second chances. I pulled in, killed the engine, and sat for a moment staring through the fogging windshield. I should have been furious, but mostly, I just felt empty. Inside, the diner was nearly deserted. A couple of truckers sat in a corner booth nursing mugs of coffee. The waitress, a heavy-set woman with gray streaks in her ponytail, glanced up as I entered. Her name tag said Gloria. Sit anywhere you like, hon, she said, voice soft but worn. I slid into a booth by the window and ordered coffee. The vinyl seat creaked under my weight. Outside, the snow fell harder, blurring everything beyond the glass into white static. When Gloria set the mug in front of me, I wrapped my hands around it like an anchor. The heat seeped into my fingers, steadying them. Long drive? She asked, glancing at the snow clinging to my coat. I nodded. Long year, she chuckled quietly, setting a small plate of pie beside me. This one's on the house. Apple crumb. You look like you need it. Thank you, I murmured. And for some reason, that simple kindness almost broke me. I didn't cry. I just sat there, staring at the steam rising from my mug, realizing that for the first time in years, I didn't have to rush anywhere. No sister to check on, no phone buzzing with emergencies that weren't mine to solve. Just me, a piece of pie, and quiet. It should have felt lonely. Instead, it felt like freedom in disguise. Somewhere between bites of apple and sips of bitter coffee, a memory surfaced. My 10th birthday. The one that never happened. I could still see it, pink balloons taped unevenly across the kitchen walls, Mom baking a cake that smelled like vanilla and sugar, Dad stringing lights above the window. I'd spent all morning helping, giddy with excitement. Then Tessa caught a cold. Just a sniffle. Mom had walked in, her voice soft but final. "Sweetheart, your sister's not feeling well. We'll have to cancel." I'd nodded, pretending it didn't matter. "We can celebrate next week," I'd said, trying to sound grown up. But we never did. Life moved on, and the small moments meant for me always seemed to get swallowed by Tessa's needs. "You're the strong one," Mom used to say. "She's delicate." Those words shaped everything. I learned early that being strong meant never complaining, never needing, never saying no. When I finally left the diner, the snow had eased into a soft drift. I drove another hour before spotting a small motel off Route 12, Evergreen Lodge. The kind of place with flickering signs and single-digit room numbers. The man at the counter barely looked up from his crossword as I checked in. Room 7, $50 cash. Inside, the air smelled faintly of bleach and pine cleaner. A single bed with a faded quilt, a small heater humming near the window. I dropped my bag on the floor and sat on the edge of the mattress, staring at my reflection in the mirror opposite the bed. I looked older than 32, not because of wrinkles or fatigue, but because I could see years of silent compromise etched behind my eyes. I whispered it out loud, testing the shape of the truth. "It's not my job to fix her." The words felt heavy, solid like stones finally laid down after years of carrying them uphill. The heater clicked rhythmically, the only sound in the room. I crawled under the blanket, letting the exhaustion pull me under. My dreams were chaotic. Flashes of my parents' voices, Tessa's laughter, the echo of my own guilt until the sound of morning crept in through thin curtains. I woke early. Light filtered through the frost-coated window, painting the walls pale blue. The world outside was silent, blanketed in snow. I brewed weak coffee from the motel's courtesy tray and pulled out my notebook from my bag. I started writing, not a journal entry, a list. Every time I'd said yes when I meant no. Every rescue disguised as kindness. Every apology I'd given for boundaries I never enforced. By the time I finished, 2 pages were filled with names, dates, and small betrayals against myself. Each line felt like pulling another thorn from my skin. The apartment in Burlington where I paid half her rent for a few months that turned into 3 years. The Jeep Compass I co-signed for, despite knowing she couldn't handle the payments. The credit card she'd maxed out buying concert tickets. The birthday party that never was. Somewhere between line 30 and 31, I started to cry. Not the loud, movie kind of crying. The quiet sort that catches you off guard, where tears fall before you even realize they've started. It wasn't sadness exactly. It was grief. Grieving the years I'd spent mistaking control for care. By noon, I'd made a decision. I wasn't going to run away. I would go back to that cabin, not to fight, not to justify, but to reclaim what was mine. The drive back up the mountain felt different. The snow had eased, revealing the dark stretch of asphalt winding through trees heavy with white. Sunlight caught the ice on branches, making the forest shimmer. When I pulled into the driveway, the world was still. No music, no cars. I stepped out slowly. The snow crunched beneath my boots, the cold biting at my nose. The front door was unlocked, just as I'd left it. Inside, the cabin gleamed. Every surface polished, every cushion aligned, as though someone had tried to erase the evidence of what happened. The garish decorations were gone. Even the air smelled different, pine and lemon cleaner. My eyes drifted to the mantel. My parents' photo was back in its place, centered and spotless. For a moment, I stood there frozen, torn between relief and sorrow. It was too perfect, like guilt masquerading as cleanliness. My phone buzzed. A message from Tessa. "We left. The cabin's clean. I'm sorry." I sank into the armchair near the fire. The silence was deafening, but it didn't scare me anymore. It felt earned. I built a fire, poured a glass of wine, and stared into the flames. My anger was gone. What replaced it was something quieter, heavier, understanding. I hadn't just enabled Tessa's dependency. I'd built it, brick by brick, out of guilt and fear and love twisted into obligation. I thought of Mom again, telling me Tessa was fragile, that I was strong. That protecting her was my duty. No one had ever told me it was okay to stop. That night, I toasted the fire. To boundaries, I whispered, and drank to the empty room. The next 3 days passed in deliberate stillness. I cooked breakfast each morning: eggs, toast, coffee. I read old novels by the fire, walked through the snow-covered trails behind the cabin, and wrote more lists. But this time, not of regrets, of goals, peace, stability, relationships built on respect. On the fourth morning, I woke before sunrise, an idea forming with clarity I hadn't felt in years. I opened my laptop and started taking back control quietly, methodically. First, I emailed the property manager of Tessa's apartment, removing myself as co-signer. Then I called the bank, ending my automatic car loan payments. Finally, I contacted the credit card company, formally withdrawing my name as guarantor. Each click was like exhaling another burden. When I finished, I sat back, staring at the soft light creeping through the window. For the first time, the air felt lighter. I felt lighter. 3 days later, an email arrived. Tessa Miller is behind on rent. My old instincts flared. The urge to fix, to shield, to step in before the world punished her. But I breathed through it, steady and deliberate. Then I replied, follow the lease agreement. Standard protocol. No apology. No explanation. When I hit send, a calm I couldn't explain settled in my chest. A week later, another email. Vehicle repossession completed. A photo attached: her Jeep being towed through falling snow. I stared at it for a long time, not out of spite, but reflection. It was the first time Tessa's consequences were hers alone. That night, I built another fire and wrote a letter to myself. You are not cruel for setting boundaries. You are not selfish for wanting peace. You are not unloving for refusing to drown in someone else's chaos. I folded the paper carefully and tucked it between the pages of my notebook. Outside, the wind whispered through the pines, the sound soft and endless. I leaned back in the chair, eyes on the flames. The hardest part about choosing yourself isn't the guilt. It's realizing you were the one standing in your own way the entire time. I poured a final glass of wine, raised it toward the fire, and whispered, this year, I came home for Christmas. And finally came home to myself. I didn't know it then, but that quiet moment, just me, the snow, and the sound of fire would be the turning point for everything that came next. Morning crept into the cabin through pale curtains, a slow golden spill of light cutting through the gray. The snow had stopped overnight, leaving the forest blanketed in silence so deep I could hear my own heartbeat. The fireplace had gone cold, reduced to white ash and a few glowing embers. My wine glass from the night before sat half-finished on the table beside me, a red crescent at the bottom catching the dawn. I didn't move for a while. The air inside was still, almost reverent, as if the house itself understood what had changed. The tension that had lived here in the walls, in me, had evaporated. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel watched by my responsibilities. I just existed. I made coffee and stepped onto the porch, pulling my coat tighter around me. The air was so cold it stung my lungs. Beyond the trees, the lake had frozen solid, a smooth white expanse that glimmered under the morning sun. I watched the horizon for a long time, steam rising from the mug in my hands, and realized something simple. I didn't miss the noise. Not the family drama, not the constant phone calls, not the endless worrying about who might fall apart next. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It was sacred. The phone rang that afternoon. The name on the screen made my stomach clench. Tessa. For a few seconds, I considered ignoring it. I could have, but part of me wanted to hear her voice, to see if anything had shifted. I answered, Reagan? Her voice cracked on my name. Thank God you picked up. I sank into the armchair, keeping my voice steady. Hey, what's going on? There was a long, ragged exhale on the other end. Then words started tumbling out. Everything's falling apart. Derek's mad at me. His mom called me lazy, said I'm an embarrassment to their family, and Derek didn't defend me. He just stood there, Reagan, like I was some stranger. Her voice shook. I could hear the echo of cupboards slamming, the muffled chaos of an argument happening in the background. What happened? I asked quietly. He said I need to get my life together, that I can't keep expecting people to take care of me, she said. Her voice broke on a sob. I don't even know where I'm supposed to go now. His parents don't want me there, and I can't afford rent since you cut everything off. I just need some time. Please, Reagan, let me come stay at the cabin, just for a little while, until I figure things out. Her words hit that familiar place in my chest, the spot where guilt always lived. For years, those pleas had been my trigger. The part of me that couldn't stand to see her suffer, that believed love meant rescuing. But this time, something felt different. I looked out the window. The snow outside had begun to fall again, gently this time, soft flakes drifting past the glass like quiet thoughts. "Tessa," I said, calm but firm. "You're 31. You have to start fixing your own life." Silence. I could hear her breathing, fast, sharp. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I can't keep saving you." Her breath hitched, and I could almost picture her standing in a messy kitchen, phone in one hand, pacing like a caged animal. "Wow, so you're just done? You're abandoning me?" "No," I said softly. "I'm finally trusting you to take care of yourself." Her voice rose, brittle with anger. "You think you're so much better than me, don't you? Miss Perfect, with her little mountain cabin and fancy job. You wouldn't even have that cabin if you didn't use mom and dad's life insurance after they died. You think that makes you noble? It makes you selfish." I didn't respond right away. I let the words hang in the air, unflinching. For once, I didn't rush to defend myself. "Tessa," I said finally, "you can keep blaming me for your life, but that doesn't change it. I can't be your reason anymore, not for the good things or the bad ones." The silence that followed was thick with static. Then, in the background, I heard a man's voice. "Derek, stop yelling," he said. "Your sister's right. You can't keep living like this." Tessa's voice cracked. "Stay out of this." "I'm done staying out of it," he said, louder now. "You keep burning every bridge you cross. Your sister's the only person who's ever had your back, and you've treated her like a bank account with a heartbeat." Something crashed, the sound of glass shattering. "Tessa?" Derek's voice again, sharper this time. That was my grandmother's vase. I closed my eyes, the chaos unfolding like a play I'd seen too many times before. Then, abruptly, the line went dead. The silence afterward was absolute. I lowered the phone and stared at it, waiting for it to ring again. It didn't. For a long time, I sat there, breathing slowly, feeling something inside me shift, not in sadness, but in finality. I realized I wasn't panicking. I wasn't rushing to fix anything. I was free. I set the phone down gently and whispered, "This isn't my storm to stop." 3 weeks passed before I heard anything more. It was Mark, a mutual friend from our hometown. His tone was cautious, almost apologetic. "I figured you'd want to know," he said. "Derek filed for divorce. Tessa moved out last week. I think she's staying with your aunt in Connecticut for now." My hand tightened around the phone. "Is she okay?" Well, she's Tessa. Angry at the world. Telling people you betrayed her." I let out a slow breath. "That sounds about right. You don't deserve the blame," Mark said. "Everyone can see she's spiraling." I didn't reply immediately. Because the truth was, I didn't feel angry or vindicated. I felt something much more complicated, grief mixed with relief. Like watching a fire finally burn out, leaving behind smoke and silence. That night, I built another fire in the cabin. The flames licked the wood, casting gold light against the walls. I poured a glass of wine and stared into the flames. I thought about every time I'd cleaned up Tessa's messes, every tear I'd wiped, every debt I'd paid, every sacrifice I'd made in the name of love. I'd called it loyalty, but maybe it was fear. Fear of being the bad sister, the one who didn't give enough. I realized something then. You can't heal someone by destroying yourself. The fire popped, sending a small spark into the air. I smiled faintly. By February, the snow had started to melt. The lake thawed around the edges, sunlight flickering on the dark water like glass. I'd returned to Boston by then, back to work, back to my apartment that felt too quiet and yet perfectly right. My coworkers noticed the change before I did. "You seem lighter," one said, "more grounded." My boss, Parker, called me into his office one afternoon. "Your presentation last month, the way you took charge, that's exactly what we've been needing around here. I want you leading the Westridge account, the biggest client." A project I'd never even dreamed of getting. I walked out of his office smiling, not because of the promotion, but because I'd done it without carrying anyone else on my back. That night, I treated myself to dinner at a small Italian place near my apartment. I ordered pasta, a glass of Chianti, and sat alone by the window watching the snowfall. It didn't feel lonely. It felt earned. Over the next few months, I began rebuilding the life I'd always imagined but never prioritized. I reconnected with old friends. Marlene, who used to be my partner in crime at work before life got in the way. Julie, my college roommate, who laughed when she saw me and said, "You look like someone who finally slept for 8 hours." We started hiking again on weekends. One morning, halfway up Mount Greylock, Julie turned to me, panting. "You know," she said, "I used to worry about you. You were always fixing everyone else's life, but never your own." I thought that was strength, I admitted, brushing snow off my gloves. "And now?" she asked. "Now I know strength isn't carrying everyone. It's knowing what's yours to carry." She smiled. "You finally get it." I laughed. Took me long enough. That spring, I drove back to the cabin. The roads were clear, the trees alive with green again. When I stepped out of the car, the air smelled of pine and damp earth. The cabin looked the same, but it didn't feel the same. It wasn't a hiding place anymore, it was mine, wholly, fully, without guilt attached to its walls. Inside, I'd redecorated. The photo of Mom and Dad now sat proudly on the mantel again, flanked by smaller frames. Pictures from hikes, dinners with friends, quiet mornings with coffee. I'd hung new curtains, painted the kitchen a deep Cabernet red. That night, I hosted a small dinner party. 8 friends from work and my hiking group. Laughter filled the air, soft music playing in the background. The table was mismatched, thrifted plates and old glasses, but it felt real, warm, alive. After dinner, my friend Lauren raised her glass. "To Reagan," she said, "who taught us that boundaries aren't walls. They're doors you choose when to open." Everyone clinked glasses. I smiled, a real one, not the tight, polite kind I used to wear. "To freedom," I said, "yours and mine." When everyone had left and the last dish was washed, I stepped outside with a blanket wrapped around my shoulders. The night was cool, the stars bright. The mountains loomed dark and steady in the distance. I sat on the porch listening to the world breathe. My phone buzzed. A message from Tessa. "Hey, got a job. It's part-time, but it's a start. Thinking about taking some online business classes. Maybe you could help me look over the course list when you have time. No rush." I read it twice, feeling something shift in my chest. A cautious warmth. Not hope exactly, but maybe the beginning of trust. I didn't answer right away. I finished my glass of wine first, watching the moonlight dance on the lake. Then I typed back, "I'm proud of you. Let's talk soon." Weeks turned into months. Summer came. The cabin grew vibrant with life. Wildflowers near the porch, the scent of cedar through open windows. I started therapy again, not because I was broken, but because I wanted to stay whole. My therapist, Dr. Norris, helped me unpack years of conditioning, the martyrdom passed down from my mother, the guilt that had become my inheritance. "You're learning to live without carrying," she said one day. "That's the true weight loss." By autumn, I realized I hadn't heard Tessa's name spoken in bitterness in months. The quiet was peaceful, not empty. Then, near Christmas, my phone rang again. Her name lit up the screen. I answered, heart steady. "Hey," she said. Her voice was soft, unguarded. "Merry Christmas." "Merry Christmas," I said. "I just wanted to say, thank you," she continued, "for not saving me." My eyes stung. "You saved yourself, Tessa." There was a pause, then a shaky laugh. "Maybe, but you gave me the space to do it." We talked for an hour about her new apartment, her classes, the volunteer work she'd started at an animal shelter. There were no accusations, no tears, no guilt. Just 2 sisters finding a rhythm they'd never had before. After we hung up, I sat by the fire, the flames dancing gold and red. The air smelled of cedar and cocoa. I raised my glass toward the mantel where our parents' photo smiled back at me. "See?" I whispered. "We're okay." Outside, snow began to fall again, soft, steady, endless, and for the first time in a long time, it didn't feel like a burden. It felt like grace. Moral: family love isn't about how much you give, it's about knowing when to stop giving everything. Boundaries aren't the end of love. They're where healthy love begins.